how we maintain, at least for the county. It's a mile, .2 off the end of the map here, where Wendell Road comes in. You have a former railroad line that's available if it to be reestablished, but both of those coming down Magazine Road and into Amity Airfield, that needs to me, I think, as a corridor, needs to be carved out and preserved for, so if somebody has a property up in Wendell, what you're going to do is you're going to enhance the potential value of not only this property, but all that surrounding area in terms of economic vitality. And that's something as a principle that I don't want to see us lose in our rush out the door. I don't think the county should own this in the long term. That was never the plan. That was never what was represented, even though we've had staff over a period of time take a different tack. And the board, I think, needs to say enough of that. Because I think the former experience is a classic example. I agree with you, Mr. Albaugh. This isn't costing us anything right now. That other was costing us, and we had to figure out how to shut down the hemorrhaging. And maybe it wasn't done in a very pretty fashion, but the bottom line is the general fund can't be subsidizing maintaining these properties. Now, as far as the infrastructure is concerned, you're right. You know, if I'm a private guy and I got $40 million and I put in this infrastructure, I'm not going to be interested in having all my competitors using it. And see, and that's the role that the county plays, is if one guy comes in and uses it and he puts in the infrastructure, and we do that with development agreements all the time, so that as other interests come in, that primary developer, okay, is entitled to some sort of remuneration of any other interest that comes in to use it in terms of being paid back. So in terms of how we structure our agreement with the Army is how you address that point thing. Because I don't think the first developer should have to bear the burden of cost for all the others that follow along the lines. And the second part, I think, in terms of having, and it goes to the performance standard, and I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Hammond, because I think there has to be performance standards. Because if you sell this to one entity, and they decide either to go bankrupt, or they have interest in other parts of the world and decide not to make this a priority, and they shut that down for the next 25 years, the goose that you're waiting to lay the golden egg, you know, isn't going to be doing anything. And I think we need to make sure that we don't get shortchanged that way. And too often, these areas get shortchanged by those big interests. So I think the RFP needs to address all those factors, and if we don't have that in place, I guarantee you I won't be in support of awarding it to one sole entity like that to do it. I think we need to preserve at least a public access to that facility in perpetuity.
Thank you. Just one comment on what Jim said. I mean, to say that if you sell it as one piece, there's no competition, don't make sense, because you can have 50 people out there bidding against each other to get it. The competition doesn't change if you cut it up into 10 pieces. I mean, you may have one person buy all 10 pieces. You still got the same people bidding on it.
That's why you have to have at least the public access to find it is not
Public access,
so,
right.
so that other properties in the surrounding area could have access.
That has to be
Well, there's all other issues out there also, Supervisor Chapman. There's security issues on an Army base. So, I mean, that's something that we really have to consider.
Well, that's why the Army is going to have to agree to whatever you do.
I understand that. And it's also going to be a co-use facility. So you start having 4 or 5 different entities involved with the Department of Army, it's never going to go anywhere. It's never going to go anywhere. You know how things are with the Department of Army as it is.
I think today's agenda item is just is mainly to do. Yeah, if we're going to in the community, you know, we're discussing do we sell it as one. When I say one, we are going to retain that little piece at the bottom or split. So if you don't mind, we'll bring it back, but I'd like to hear from the public. All right, Felix.
My name is Felix Flores. I'm live in Herlo. I've been doing some research, and that research has to do with this document. And this document was created by this board. And you guys did a fine job on it. It really covers about everything that you guys were discussing. This was done through funds from the RRA, and it was prepared by RK Associates. They're economic planning and real estate consultants. And it covers everything you guys said. Access to the road, it covers it in here. The uses of it, it covers it in here. Air National Guard, covers it in here. Okay? the access from one part of the field to the other, and the security issues. It's also in this report. Everything that you guys are discussing has already been finished, okay? And we should sell it as one property, and the reason I feel we should do that, then we have one person to utilize this document. It's ready for them. Do we have to update it? Probably so. But we have the concept here, okay? It's easier to negotiate any contract with one individual. Once you get more than one, everybody has their own ideas. What we care about for the county and the community that I live in, okay, is a better quality of life, good paying jobs, tax revenue for our county. We need somebody to come in and say, yes, you have a plan, we're going to try to accomplish it. And it's your plan. It's the county's plan. And you guys created, and it's a good plan to start with. You should stick to it. If you guys like to read it, I mean, there's a lot of good information in here. And it's all done for us. It's complete. I encourage you to sell it as one property. I think it would benefit the county and the community itself, our community. Thank you.
Felix, is that the 2003 document or?
This was created on December 31st, 2000. And it should have been input. It gave you a guideline on what we needed to do. On the utilities and stuff, okay? You gotta remember that the depot has privatized everything outside the gate. That responsibility will come to the Huron Public Utilities District, okay? We are now providing water and wastewater to any growth, okay? And they'll come to us and ask what they want. We'll set out a plan, get our engineering, and figure out what's gonna cost that developer. I mean, our community is pretty well taking your concepts, and we have been applying them, okay? And I'm very proud, it's not costing the county any money. The community has done it. And we're hoping a developer will do the same thing, that it doesn't cost the citizens of the county, that we use private money, okay, to accomplish our goals, to accomplish jobs, quality of life, law enforcement, increasing a quality of life for our county employees. I mean, could be really big, you guys, and I think you should give us the opportunity. I think we should go in that direction when you do your RFP. Let's utilize what we have and expand it. Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for that. Does anyone else would like to talk?
Alan Schumacher. I'd like to respond to a couple of things. I agree, Mr. Plow, that we're not in the real estate business. We are not.
You're proving that.
Mr. Alba, I'm surprised Larry didn't gavel you. We're not silly. If it's not costing us money, like you said, it's no cost. If it's not making us money, we're losing. Just the way it is. I agree, Mr. Chapman, the corridor, gated by the county, that's all right. But even you said, no cost. If it's not costing us, it's not making us. So it needs to make us money. And the report, I don't know how many of you have read it. Aaron, have you read that report?
The one he was just talking about?
Right.
I haven't got my disc, but
Yeah,
but I'm aware
it's
of
been
it.
provided to us and you've been
Okay.
reviewing it on.
Well, it's
this.
been a while, so be something
We
to
have
look at.
we have
I've
all,
taken,
all the documents relative to that, not only just that document, but
Right.
all the other documents are on disk.
well, I realize that a couple of you are new on here, but I know my supervisor's gone into that, and I didn't know if you had, but it would be beneficial for you to read that and see what the plan has been.
I'll be honest, I haven't read the full thing completely verbatim, no. I haven't, I'll be honest.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Is, anyone else? Eileen?
I have a question about the, Eileen Spencer, CandyMap.com. I have a question about the agenda item because I saw something I've never seen before, Amity Electrical Substation parcel. I've never seen you include that statement before. What is that?
The names of those parcels were taken from one, or they've been referred to as many different parcels, but we went back to the deeds and that's how they were referred to.
It's this parcel right here, right at the very bottom as you come off this road.
And that's the parcel you're thinking about the county keeping. Why is it called electrical substation? Is there
The
some
electrical
structure?
substation, I believe, is the one at the north, west corner,
Northwest corner.
up by the runway.
Is that the one right here? Okay.
Okay, so it's not the bottom piece that you want to keep. East Shore parcel, what is that, where is that?
East Shore is the parcel along the east shore of the lake.
Along the same one?
Yeah.
In one piece? Okay, you've talked about some of you not wanting to sell it to one person. You sold the city of, or township of Hurlong to one person without including in the RFP, some financial statement. So for $31,000, you sold a whole town with no, absolutely zero assurance that that one person, that one entity has any money at all to spend on fixing up Hurlong. I've talked with Richard before he became this position about including the requirement of a financial statement. This has potential to be a great plus for the county as far as selling it, and it seems like you should have, would have, could have asked for a financial statement for selling a town, and you certainly at this point cannot ask or include in the RFP some financial statement, because I remember offering you $1 for all the property. And so, but I mean, in all seriousness, you have an obligation to the taxpayers to at least sell it to someone that has the means to develop it. And I don't really care if you sell 10 pieces or 1 piece or 3 pieces or whatever. I don't have an opinion on that. It just seems like you want to do a service to the county and the taxpayers. You should at least make sure that the people have the financial capability of developing this. I don't want to see it sold to Steve Pizzullo because he had an interest. It's the minute he bought Hurlong, he wanted to trade the V2 property for the airport. So there's some value there
I'd like
for
to
one
just keep
person.
the discussion to the.
And
Talking
so
about-
there's a real concern that this may repeat itself.
Mr. Chairman, if I could comment, because I think that's an extremely important concern, and I appreciate Mrs. Spencer raising that, because I think knowing whoever winds up, whether it's one bidder or one property or several properties, whoever acquires it needs to be able to demonstrate the means. And I hate to pick off the scab, but that is exactly the problem we had with the Dyer Mountain project, is that people had great ideas and great intent, and everybody jumped in there, it was gonna be this wonderful thing there. But when you had a succession of corporate interests, okay, who didn't have the means to develop, I mean, to me, the red light was when they're trying to convince you they're gonna build a $300 to $500 million ski resort, and they didn't have $156,000 to pay a basic tax bill. So that's what we need to avoid, is to make sure that whoever steps to the plate, singularly or in a group, is that they've got to demonstrate the capacity that they're going to be able to pony up, and that the tax bills, when they become due for whatever development that's going to be there, that they have the wherewithal to pay those tax bills and not come in and con us the way we were conned on the Dyer Mountain project. And that to me was a travesty. So I think, you know, the point is well taken, and I agree with you absolutely, that needs to be a fundamental part of whatever the RFP has.
Yeah, just a fast comment, if you start asking for a lot of information, like financial information, you're just gonna cut down the amount of people that bid on it. A are not willing to give that out, and they may be extremely financially available. What they're gonna do with it afterwards, I don't think it's our business. It's their business. Whoever owns it, whoever buys it, it is now their property. What they do with it is up to them.
Well, it better be our business.
As far as
We're
Iron
gonna be-
Mountain goes, in the beginning, the money was there. But the economy took a big downfall is when a lot of your investors pulled out and the money dried up.
Well, I tell you, when they didn't pay that first tax bill the first year out, that was 3 years before the economy took a tank. So that thing was doomed to failure from the get-go.
All right, we're so far off track, it's not even funny, okay? This
Come on,
isn't-
Chairman,
this
keep
isn't-
everything like
This
that.
isn't an agenda item about structuring the RFP. Let's remember that. It's an agenda item about do we sell it in one or do we sell it? Those conversations are gonna have their place.
Point
but-
well
but-
taken.
But it's not today. I also wanna say that, just, I'm not gonna make the same mistake about going off of this. Guys, I wanna, say that the LRA deal, it was zero cost to the county now, it was 70 grand a year, but so anyhow. Okay, we're gonna continue with public comment.
Yeah, my name's Eric Niesman, Milford. Just in my experience in construction on big projects, I feel it's best to keep it in one lump sum, one chunk of property. You could always have the developer come in and make an offer on parts of it. And, again, make sure that they have backing or gonna do something with the property immediately. Because the property itself is worth nothing, it's what somebody else puts on it is where the county is gonna benefit. And the more you chop it up, the more you are gonna get speculators in there. And I just don't, it's a narrow property, I mean, it's a narrow use property. So it is gonna be hard to find somebody, but you're better off, in my opinion, keeping it in one large chunk.
I agree with you, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. I just want to, caution the board, we keep making mention of, was that one person, or it's almost like, we have a preconceived idea of one individual that we're gonna sell this to. And from my point, couldn't be more false. I wanna market it, nationally, or globally, or however, expose it to as many people as possible, and look at everything, not one person, a company, made up of several people with a good resume showing, I don't wanna really see, okay, what are we gonna do? More importantly, show us what you've done, and we've come up with a good thing. I think we need to get off the mindset that there's one, guy out there that is the only, no. I believe there's gonna be several, I hope there'll be several, and not individuals, but very worthwhile, strong financial companies that will take a chance, on an investment that might pay off long term. The question remains, and I think that's what we need to focus to and move on. Do we want to offer it as one parcel or several?
So I'll make a motion, we sell it in one part.
I'll second that.
Okay, under discussion.
Under discussion, it was talked about, we can put performance standards and evaluations on this property. I mean, once this is sold, if it's sold to one or two or whatever, if somebody isn't living up to those performance standards or evaluations we have set up in the RFP, it's private property. What can we do about it?
Fair enough.
Besides nothing.
Okay, your questions are valid, but they have really enough, with all due respect, to do with this agenda item, because that's gonna be a
Well, but-
discussion for when we formulate the RFP.
I know, but it does, because in my opinion, because, once it goes to private, we have no recourse, it's sold as one unit, we have no recourse on anything.
It's not gonna go to private until the majority of the board approves an RFP, and those type of languages and safeguards will need to be in there. That is strictly an issue for the.
Once it goes to private property, you can't do anything, so,
But what I'm saying
That's fine.
is, it's not gonna go to private property until we,
It'll
come
go
up
to
with
private
an
property
RFP.
with restrictions of the RFP.
And those type of concerns are gonna be addressed in the RFP. I don't mean to cut you short.
No, that's fine, but I'm just, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I want my question answered, you know, if it's, whether it's sold as one, if it's sold as one unit. Okay, if you have some performance standards evaluation, I mean, you have no recourse to go back and get it once it's sold.
I know Supervisor Chapman's gonna go up, but can I just maybe, can you address that? I don't want you to feel like.
No, I-
Sure. I think I don't know how many times we've been in this boardroom talking about different contract conditions we put on an economic development project or what have you. They're only as good as the party that you're dealing with. And I think what you'll see probably in this situation, no matter who buys it, they're probably gonna take title to it in some sort of shell entity that if things go sideways, they disappear. And we've seen that many times. And so the enforceability of those restrictions, I think, is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible.
Now you got litigation.
But we're, yeah.
In practicality, I'm sure the attorneys would tell you there's ways you can
If
do it.
I
but
could
in
interject on
practicality-
that point before I address the question I have, the enforceability comes in this factor here, no matter who winds up with it. They're gonna need the county in order to be able to access the airfield through the Army. So without us, you know, they can do whatever they want to. So the ultimate enforceability is if they don't wanna work and perform as they've indicated, then we basically, they're frozen out of having any access to that airstrip because the county can say, sorry, we're not gonna do it.
Right, but
And they're dead in the water.
But I think what Aaron's concern was somebody buys the property and then flies off to Europe for 20 years. And in that case, I don't know, you know, how we would enforce.
I would suggest, if we have a procedural process, I think we need to adhere to it, if I could, Mr. Chairman, and it pertains to the motion and it pertains to the issue of the single nature, which is what the agenda item is about. First of all, just to run out the door and go do an RFP, we need to, first of all, declare the property surplus as far as the county's interest is concerned. So it would require, just like we had with the last fiasco, it was in April of 2012 when the board determined by resolution what was to be surplus and what wasn't. And it was at that point, irrespective of what staff did after that, in terms of implementing the resolution is where all the controversy is. But the board made it very clear what parts of the asset was to be included and what part was to be excluded. In that case, there were 3 things that were to be excluded. Ultimately, when it was all done, only 2 things got excluded and 1 got, you know, carried over. So I think it would be helpful for everybody in the room concerned that we know in advance what it is that we're all bidding on and agreeing on before you even do the RFP, by having a resolution that singularly defines what is being surplus, whether it's the strip or this or that or whatever it is. And my question to the motion makers, and it will have a lot to do upon how I'm going to vote on the motion. Now, we've already had the discussion with the little piece down here that, you know, maybe could be a fire hall someday or a park or something, of not including it. So is the motion, when we talk about creating a single parcel, does it include that? Does it exclude that? That needs to be decided. What I'd also like to suggest, you know, in terms of the board's going to go in the direction they're going, is this northeast portion of the property, and you can pretty much use this power pole here. That's what the yellow dot shows. There's a blue line, comes down to a red box, which is a gate closed. There's another gate closed right next to it on the very corner of the airstrip. And then there's a line that takes you back to these 2 green points, which is gates open along Magazine Road. And this is kind of where the airport, Amity Airport Road comes in. What I'd suggest is from that yellow box to the red box over to this corner here, because there's no reason to leave a little strip there, is that northeast corner of the property be reserved, excluded from the 1 parcel, and that be retained by the county for future public access to the airstrip. And whatever the county decides to do, maybe we want to put a fire hall, or maybe we want to put a family resource center or something in that spot along with this parcel here. So we have a presence at both the north and south end of this remainder be made the 1 parcel, if that's what they're going to go with. I think it's imperative that because that gives you access to where the former rail line is, it gives you access to the road that takes you back up to Wendell Road. So whatever future development other people may have, contrary to what the owner that would acquire in one fell swoop that, it preserves public access to that facility. So I would suggest that we exclude that from the offer of, if you're gonna go with a single parcel, along with the one that was discussed earlier.
Is that a county road?
I'm not sure
That
which
one
one.
that one that cuts diagonally across?
Amity Airfield Road, it shows here is the road, so really what you're looking
Pretty
at
sure,
is.
Jim, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's already a county road.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the property, what I'm suggesting is we come down here to this point, back over to here, and
I can't-
basically retain,
If it's already county road.
It's already a county road, Jim, I think. I think that the access issue's already solved itself. Felix probably knows.
No, not really, I just did a little bit of research. In your document that you guys did, it actually discusses it. On page 2.1, it says, Amity Army Airfield, and they describe the access, Wendell Road, Susanville Road, Magazine Road. I mean, it's all right here, basically, it's already been discussed, and you guys are, the board that has it all, it's the idea is now we have to implement it. Okay?
Well, I think the property, the roads you're talking about access to the parcel, and what they're
Right.
talking
Right,
about is
it's
through.
full line road, I mean, sure, it's not, it's,
They're
right now it's
talking
all
about
gravel and
access.
stuff.
what I'm
Onto-
talking
through
about,
the
not
park.
just the road as an access, I'm talking about this amount of property around that road that ties into the corner be retained by the county as not part of, so it doesn't matter if you got one person or they develop and there's 100 people eventually operating there, that this would be retained for public ownership, so there's a guaranteed public access to that airfield at all times. Eagle Lake is an example, okay? There's only a half a dozen at best access points to Eagle Lake because it's privately owned around. So if you're the public and you want to go to Eagle Lake, you have to go to, but what would happen if the lake was totally owned by private and there's no public access? See, that's the issue. This is the same kind of a concept. So we want to preserve a future public access to the airstrip that would not be sold off or given up, it would be retained. That leaves, out of the 3,000 acres, it probably leaves, 28 or 2,900 to go do development and reserve whatever the 200 or 300 acres that might represent. I think it would be critical to incorporate that. So if you're gonna do the motion, I would hope they would exclude that as well as that other piece down below.
How do we identify those two pieces?
Well,
You put in a motion.
you can start with
The
the.
piece Jim had with the symbol
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that competent, capable county staff could delineate what that would be in terms of a meet and bound description.
I'm trying to, I understand the access, but why do we need like 400 or 500 acres?
What do we need that?
It's not 400 or 500 acres.
I think it is.
Well, if this
The whole thing's
is
about 6,000.
3,000 acres, and that's probably represents maybe 10% at best. If this is 3,000 acres, that can't be more than 200 or 300 acres, it's probably closer to 150 acres.
Jim, could you put those up there so we all can see what you're looking at? Can you put them up on the whiteboard?
What's the acreage, Richard, of that whole?
I can't see
Of
it.
the whole thing?
Can you see them from there?
3, more acres.
If we already have the access, let's, I mean, that's,
It's more than a
35 and
road.
4,000. We
We
could,
already have access.
no,
No.
no,
I'm nervous you're making the surveyor scared, so I would, we want to make a graphic with a resolution for you to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be a resolution first that then orders the surplus, and then the RFP is based on the resolution, and at least you have, and that's just the upper part of, if you look at it, it's probably, let's draw one on this map, which is,
so, the thing is we've restricted the access from both ends that way with the county property if there's,
but I think the idea of access through here is public access, not restricted, isn't that right?
it's public access, yes.
So
And it would be
that
public
would be-
access up there too.
And public access up here too.
so who takes care of the road? Have you been out on that road?
Well, if you're gonna develop it, we're gonna take care of it.
We can't even plow the snow in front of Fort St. School.
That's when you get snow.
That road's gonna be $8 million to put in. Are we gonna put the road in for him?
It's not gonna be $8 million.
Along the
Why don't
line
you
road?
take 20 million or 100 million? You just-
I've already heard figures.
Okay. In here.
It's in there.
It's in here. This was 2000, if I may. I didn't want to